Hello. Losing Weight by Regaining Health, Healing Your Mammal Brain, Part 2. You should watch Part 1 before watching this. The 7 baby steps for lowering your stress hormones and healing your mammal brain. For more information on our 3 brains, the computer brain, the mammal brain, and the reptile brain, visit my Patreon page for my upcoming book, Raised by Reptiles. So step 1, computer brain thoughts. This part of the brain calculates and computes data, produces our thoughts, and labels things as good or bad. When in cahoots with the reptile brain, it tends to label everything as not quite right, dangerous, or bad, and thereby raises our stress hormones. So, what do? A, practice observing your thoughts and being aware that they are in fact just thoughts. B, become aware of the incessant nature of your thoughts. C, look for the spaces between your thoughts. Maybe there aren't any spaces. There's a space the whole time you're watching a movie or television because you have no thoughts. You're vicariously having thoughts through the movie or TV, but that doesn't really count. It doesn't matter whose thought it is, a movie's, a TV's, someone else's you're listening to, or your own thoughts. They're still thoughts. So A, practice observing thoughts and being aware of the fact that they're just thoughts, especially when it's a compelling story of some sort that elicits emotion. Make sure that you be aware of the part that's thoughts and that they're just thoughts. Become aware of the fact that they're incessant. And look for the spaces. There are spaces between your thoughts, and look for them. And number D, don't try to control or change or stop your thoughts. Just observe them. Focus on this step for 10 days before starting step 2. Perhaps do this during your meals, an easy way to get 1 to 3 hours in daily. So this is important because the computer brain is also overactive as well as the reptile brain. And they are in cahoots with each other, and they don't leave much room for our mammal brain to develop as fully as it needs to. So step 1 is really about finding space, making room so that your mammal brain can actually develop. So step 2 is mammal brain feelings. This part of the brain soothes us and calms our production of stress hormones. Modern humans have stunted mammal brains, for reasons described in my upcoming book, Raised by Reptiles, and therefore have a hard time soothing themselves during day-to-day challenges. And this is a perspective thing, and even if you disagree with this, oh no, I'm fine, I can soothe myself, I don't have a problem with day-to-day challenges. Well, if you have any disease or illness or dysfunction, any pain, then I would beg to differ. If your health is not perfect, I would beg to differ. And if we test your stress hormone levels and they're too high or too low, then it's just not true. You're not perceiving things accurately, and you're producing too many stress hormones if you're having a problem, if you have a stunted mammal brain. Here are the beginning steps for rehabilitating your stunted mammal brain. A. Practice observing your inner body, what your inner body feels like. What is your inner body? It is that part of you that requires no words to know. So it's different, completely different from the computer brain, because that's all about thoughts and words. Whereas this is a feeling, and words can't describe it. You can't know it or feel it by thinking about it, because thinking implies words. It's more of a feeling, but not necessarily an emotion. And I'm going to have a video soon about the difference between thoughts, emotions, and feelings. The gist of it is there's really just two things, feelings and thoughts, and when they intermingle, that turns into an emotion. So an emotion is a feeling with a story. So practice observing what your inner body feels like. What is your inner body? It is the part of you that requires no words to know. It's more of a feeling, but not necessarily an emotion. These feelings can be nice or not nice, but try not to label them as good or bad with your thoughts. That's the story part of it. You don't want to... you're going to do this anyway, but the point of this is not to add fuel to the fire. Just observe them and give them space to be. So in step 1, observe your thoughts. Step 2, observe your body and its feelings. But don't try to label them. You will be labeling them, but don't. I'm not telling you to label them if you're not already. All right. Step B, some sort of meditation. Centering prayer is my favorite. There'll be a link to that. About 20 minutes a day, once or twice daily. This isn't forever, but this is for several months to develop your mammal brain better. Step C. Well, let's talk about the meditation for a bit. Meditation typically is actually, my step 1 is the first part of it, is to be aware of your thoughts and that they're just thoughts. And then meditation goes a step further, and you try to be aware of the spaces between your thoughts. You try to be aware of the fact that they're just thoughts, and so that it's like you're trying to avoid jumping on the roller coaster of the thoughts and just observe them going by rather than believing in them and becoming part of them. And I believe it came out of different religious traditions, and I believe that it was designed to fix this part of our brain. When it first developed, they didn't know that there was literally something wrong with our brains, but they knew there was a problem that people had because they were too anxious and too stressed for no good reason, and meditation was aimed at trying to help that. It was also aimed at trying to help you become more spiritual or closer to God. And by the way, spirituality and communication with God, or spiritual experience of God, is experienced in our mammal brains. So having a stunted mammal brain makes it harder to have those experiences. So it all kind of fits together, right? Step C of step 2. So we're on mammal brain feelings, and the third part of what to do for that. Throughout your day, practice becoming aware of the background peace and certainty that is inside your body. Or if there is unrest, which there will be if you have had a lot of abuse in your childhood, or you have PTSD or something like this, give the unrest space to be there and feel it. Find out what it is trying to help you solve in your life. D, practice feeling the inner connection to your spiritual self, your intuition, and your connection with God on a feeling level, not a word or thinking level. And you may not be able to do that if you have a lot of unrest in you. So you'll have to deal with that first in step 2B. But focus on step 2 for 10 days before starting step 3. Perhaps do steps 2A, 2C, and 2D during your meals. An easy way to get 1 to 3 hours in daily. You obviously can't do the meditation part so much during your meal, but so step 2, capital B, talk therapy and NET if needed. If the first 2 steps give you peace, then continue them. If they give you anxiety, seek out a talk therapist to help you get to the bottom of the anxiety from a mind thinking level. And see your NET practitioner to address the anxiety from a physiological level. There's a link below to an NET practitioner near you. Step 3, reptile brain safety. This part of the brain is on the constant lookout for danger in order to keep you safe. Modern humans have an overdeveloped reptile brain, for reasons described in my upcoming book, Raised by Reptiles. When the reptile brain is overactive, it sees danger even when there is none, which is most of the time. There's no danger, and yet we see it. And exaggerates its severity when there actually is danger, contributing to an epidemic of people with chronically high levels of stress hormones leading to illness and obesity. So, you need to create a zone of safety around you to keep your reptile brain calm and dormant. Don't worry, it'll pounce into action immediately should any real danger actually present itself. A, physical safety. Build safety habits into your life. Locking doors, putting on your seatbelt, driving the speed limit, avoiding high traffic times in areas, avoid dark alleys at night. Most of you probably do that. 2, physical safety step 2. Do the 180 formula exercise by Phil Maffetone. This is actually going to train your body to have control over your reptile brain and keep it calm, because you use heart rate monitor to monitor your survival brain, your reptile brain. The heart rate is a direct reflection of that. When it's low, it's calm. When it's high, it's too excited, right? So you take 180 minus your age, and that's your maximum aerobic heart rate that you want to work out at, and you slowly over 10 minutes ramp up your heart rate to that maximum level. Then you stay there for a certain amount of time. Then you slowly over 10 minutes evenly ramp your heart rate back down. So you're actually training your heart, training your reptile brain through monitoring your heart rate so that you can control it, have control over it. It's like training your dog to be calm. We literally have a dog brain, and we need to take it to dog training. Nobody looks at it this way, but the heart rate monitor 180 formula is a really great way to gain some control over your reptile brain. Please read my Why You Shouldn't Go to the Gym or Use a Trainer article, which describes why doing high intensity exercise is kind of a bad idea, because number one, they're not paying attention to your heart rate, and your heart rate is usually sky high, which means the survival brain, danger brain, reptile brain is just going bananas, and you're actually teaching it that things are dangerous and that it needs to be on edge all the time. Not such a good idea. At least not until you fix your mammal brain. Physical safety 3. Balance and flexibility training to lower your risk of falling. Physical safety 4. Key Aikido martial arts. This helps you learn peaceful resolution to conflicts, helps you become aware of your body, helps you to calm your reptile brain when somebody's attacking you. Physical safety 5, get out of pain with chiropractic, physical therapy, or acupuncture. Pain definitely triggers the reptile brain to think that something's wrong because it is, and you got to get out of pain in order to calm down your overdeveloped reptile brain. Physical safety 6, rebuild your adrenals by following the steps in my adrenal stress article. The adrenals are the organ that produces the stress hormones when the reptile brain is perceiving danger. And so they're often abused and neglected, and they need to be rehabilitated. And so read that article, follow those steps. And physical safety 7, stop eating junk foods and avoid restaurants. Restaurants, you're likely to get parasites. It's more common than you may think. That's dangerous, physically dangerous. And junk foods, sugar specifically, stimulates your reptile brain. Get off the stuff. Caffeine too. All right, so that's how to build a zone of safety around you physically. Emotional safety, you want to build a zone of safety around you emotionally. So emotional safety 1, learn to recognize and avoid emotionally dangerous people. Not physically dangerous, but emotionally dangerous people. Most people are not physically dangerous. Like we said before, it's very rare. But they're emotionally, I would say quite a few people, it would be hard not to run into an emotionally dangerous person during your day. At least at a store or something like that. But make sure the people you contact the most are not emotional vampires. These could be coworkers, supervisors, employers, neighbors, employees, friends, and even family members. Special mention, avoid parents who were abusive or neglectful when you were a minor. Just because they are your parents doesn't mean you have to let them continue to emotionally raise your stress hormones as an adult. Emotional safety 2, learn to set healthy boundaries with everyone accordingly. Even people who seem sweet can be emotionally toxic if passive-aggressive or have a hidden personality disorder. Being around them raises your stress hormones. Emotional safety 3, avoid political news and scary or gruesome movie shows and novels. Financial safety. Obviously, one of the biggest stresses in America is financial stress. Bizarrely, even though we're the richest country in the world, one of our biggest stresses is it's like the number 1 or 2 cause of divorce in America is financial stress, real or imagined. And so out of control finances will cause elevated stress hormones in your body, contributing to illness and obesity. Financial safety 1, if needed, make a plan to increase your income over the short term and or long term. 2, use the Every Dollar budgeting app weekly to take the stress out of your spending. 3, get life insurance and health insurance. 4, get on a get out of debt plan, aka Dave Ramsey. He's not the best person to follow for investing advice if you are a sophisticated investor or you've got tons of money and you've got your 401k filled up. But if you're not there, you got to start with his plan, get all your bases in order, and then once you're a millionaire, then you can graduate from Dave Ramsey and move on to more sophisticated things. Financial safety 5, save an emergency fund of 3 months of expenses. 6, buy a home within your means. That's a blessing, not a curse. Try to pay it off early. 7, put 15% of your income towards retirement. 8, save for your children's college education. This is all really important because these subtle financial stresses are weighing on all of us, and it's not required to do this to be stress-free, but that's if you have a functional mammal brain. Most of us, it's very stunted, and so we have to calm down as much as possible the reptile brain in order to give space for the mammal brain to start developing. Focus on step 3, the safety, reptile brain safety, for 10 days to implement a plan for each of these 3 parts of safety before starting step 4. Review and modify as needed weekly. It will take a few years to fully implement and fulfill these, but taking steps towards them with an end in sight calms the reptile brain and lowers stress hormones. See, so you don't have to actually accomplish them all. You just have to make a plan and start steps and towards them and see the end in sight, right? See how long it's going to take and know that you're on the path. So step 3B, again, talk therapy, NET. If step 3 gives you peace, then continue it. If it gives you anxiety, seek out a talk therapist and an NET practitioner. Step 4, mammal brain play. Now that you've brought the space of awareness to your computer thinking brain, have begun to awaken your mammal soothing brain by fostering your inner spiritual feelings of peace, and have begun to calm your reptile safety brain, your stress levels will be low enough to begin to successfully exercise and develop your stunted mammal brain on a physical level. This will take about 3 to 6 months. The stronger your mammal brain, the less stress hormones you will produce. The following physical ways to stimulate your mammal brain. The following are physical ways to stimulate your mammal brain. Continue doing the centering prayer or meditation along with these. I'm probably going to make separate videos on each of these, so there'll be links eventually to all these. And you don't have to do them all, but they're all good ideas. A, rehab your feet by walking barefoot whenever possible and doing barefoot jump rope, barefoot rack and track. If you can't walk barefoot without pain, see me for help. So this is a pretty cool one, and it may seem like, what? Walk barefoot to rehab your mammal brain to make you produce less stress hormones? And some of the more educated ones of you may be thinking, oh, I know what he means. It's walking barefoot does that thing where you get good energy coming from the earth and keeps you grounded, and there's like electrons and stuff that come up your feet, and there was a whole book written about it. No, that's not exactly what this is. Literally, our feet are stunted because we wear shoes our whole lives. Not because we're not in connection with the earth, but because they don't have any stimulus. Our feet were designed to take the weight of our body on uneven ground and grab onto the ground with our toes. And because they're just sitting in a shoe, it effectively makes our foot into like a peg leg. It doesn't have to do much except balance on the surface of the shoe. And so all of the muscles in the foot are atrophied. Those muscles and joints when they don't get use, they all have nerves that go up to the brain and stimulate the brain. And so the part of the brain at the top here that has the map of the feet has to be stunted because the foot is stunted. But hey, you might say, wait a minute, that map is not in the mammal brain, it's the neocortical part of the brain. Yeah, but actually the reptile, mammal, and thinking computer brains don't have clear-cut delineations. They're all intermixed and overlapped, and so it's not that simple. It's just an easy way to explain it. And so it turns out that all mammals can walk as soon as they're born, except for humans. And so we have to be carried around for 9 months. And so I'm getting ahead of myself, but once we do start walking, we only have 2 feet, and most animals have 4, but we only have 2, so we're at a disadvantage to all the stimulus coming into our body. There's tons and tons of stimulus through the 4 feet of a mammal, and humans only have 2, and then to top it off, we put shoes on so that we can't actually feel anything on the ground. And so the mammal brain is developed by the inner ear stimulus when mom is walking as we're in the womb, because reptiles are generally in eggs and they're not moved around much, so they don't have an inner ear stimulus while they're incubating. Humans are getting, during the daytime, constant inner ear stimulus by their mom walking around. So I believe that's partly why mammals have live births, reptiles don't in general, and why mammals have the quote-unquote mammal brain. It's partly the inner ear stimulus, but it's also the input from their body. Mammals tend to lick each other, they tend to rub up against each other, they tend to hug each other and hold each other, and so the skin stimulus is also stimulating to the mammal brain, but the sensitivity on the feet is also has a role to play in that, and because we wear shoes, that gets stunted. So to physically wake up that part of the brain, I'm suggesting that we start rehabilitating our feet because they're all stunted. 4B is sleep in a hammock. So a hammock has a nice gentle swing to it, and it simulates being in the womb or being rocked by your mother. And anthropological studies show that mothers, hunter-gatherers, would carry their children 24/7. They didn't have cribs, they didn't let them cry to sleep, they weren't ever sleeping by themselves, they weren't ever in a playpen by themselves, not moving. They were always being jostled for the 9 months until they were crawling and then walking. And then as they're crawling and walking, they're getting their own inner ear stimulus. So when there's that absence of stimulus of the rocking, it's like you're in an egg incubating, which is the signal that you should be a reptile, not a mammal. So I believe that we can actually stimulate the mammal brain through the inner ear, and so temporarily sleeping in a hammock is going to be a good idea. 4C is to do self-massage, and we'll have a video on that to get in touch, wake up your body sensations to stimulate your mammal brain. Another piece of this is emotions, or feelings in general, are in the mammal brain, and there was a study recently that showed that the cerebellum has a role to play with emotions, and the cerebellum is stimulated by any kind of body movement. All right, so mammal brain, step 4D, practice deep, slow breathing. The only way that we can consciously calm down the reptile brain is through deep breathing. And we can't consciously slow our heart down just by thinking about it, but we can control breath. Breath is a reptile brain function, the brainstem, and we can control that with breath. So it's a way to, along with the 180 formula, to train the reptile brain. But it also, you have to become aware of your breath to do the deep breathing, which is a body awareness, which again feeds the mammal brain. Step 4E, get NET treatments. NET treatments, I believe, work because they are a mammal brain exercise. And I don't think NET quite realizes that in such a detailed way as what I'm going to be putting in my book. But it is part of the cure of modern ailments, and it does amazing stuff that it shouldn't do by releasing these NET emotional treatments. But it's fascinating, and they have a study to prove it, that it literally turns down the amygdala, which is part of the fear center. It's in the mammal brain, but it's like the switch the mammal brain has left to the reptile brain, that if there's a bad enough problem, the amygdala can turn off the mammal brain and turn on the reptile brain for emergencies, for survival. And when we perceive danger, when there's not, the amygdala lights up. And so the study literally showed that after NET treatments, the amygdala shut off and allowed the mammal brain to come back on and calm the reptile brain, and the cerebellum turned up as well. So get NET treatments. For F, rehab your skin by stopping or reducing the use of soap. So part of this is we have a flora of good bacteria on our skin, and the natural oils that we secrete are supposed to feed those good bacteria, but when we wash that oil off with soap, there's nothing for that good bacteria to eat, and then bad yeasts and bacteria can get on our skin and can cause it to be dry and itchy and inflamed. And even if it's subconscious, if there's a tiny bit of an itch that you're not even aware of, that's irritating, and that causes the reptile brain to be amped up, and the reptile brain turns off the mammal brain, and we're trying to stimulate the mammal brain, so you don't want that. Also, when you don't use soap, you're forced to scrub a little bit more when you shower and bathe, because you're trying to get all of the dead skin cells off so that there won't be food for the bad bacteria, and you're trying to clean the pores out to let your natural oils come out so it can feed the good bacteria. And that process of scrubbing yourself really well with a rag, because you have to, because you're not using soap, or less soap at least, that is a stimulant to your mammal brain, a daily stimulant. 4G is to eat healthy foods, because if you eat sugar and junk foods, it's going to stimulate your mammal brain, your reptile brain, and you can't exercise your mammal brain if you're constantly stimulating your reptile brain. H, sleep 9 hours nightly. I, sunbathe and get red light therapy. Both of those turn down the reptile brain, calm the reptile brain, and give space for the mammal brain to come out. J, dance with friends to uplifting music. Definitely a mammal brain bonding type of exercise. K, increase time spent laughing with others. You can't laugh if you're in danger, so laughing is a mammal brain function, so very, very healthy. And L, spend time with animals, especially mammals, and ride horses. The mammal brain gets stimulated by observing and being around people who are using their mammal brain. So mammals like cats and dogs and horses can't help but use those parts of their brain, or they would be dead. And so they're really good at